The way we structure our pathways, we really focus on what the specific situation is. So from the very beginning, is this adjuvant treatment or is it DCIS? I should start with that. Is it adjuvant for invasive cancer? Is it locally recurrent cancer? Is it metastatic cancer? So you've already got several different branches, and now we have the inflammatory breast cancer branch as well. And within each of these, it's very much broken up by not only subtype but stage. We will also, as mention the toxicity of certain treatments, where treatment can be adapted based on patient's age or preference or pre-existing toxicity. And in the metastatic pathway, which is obviously an important part of the pathway, our focus is primarily on, for the non-HER2 positive patients, single agent treatments with reasonable efficacy, but also good quality of life. We in general don't do combination treatments except for situations of visceral crisis where a very rapid response is needed, and those actually happen a lot less in reality than you would think. So patient-centered in the sense that we give options based on patient's preference and pre-existing toxicities, and the focus all along is on, in this situation, what's efficacious but lower toxicity, particularly in the metastatic setting. We also divide it up in the metastatic setting by line of therapy, so it's not just one big long list of all the things you can use. And say triple negative breast cancer, we'll list first line treatment, second line treatment, third line treatment. Sometimes it's third line and beyond, and sometimes there's a fourth line and beyond. When we get to those later stages or later lines of therapy, I should say, where we also list the reasons why someone might want to stop treatment and go to supportive care, because there are situations where, even though in breast cancer we have a long list of treatments we can use based on patients' toxicities, performance status, et cetera, it may be time to stop treatment and focus on palliative care instead. So that's definitely built into our pathways as well. When we develop pathways and we're looking at new trials, new drugs that have been approved, there's always focus on what was the patient population that was used in. Line of therapy, was this first, second, or third line? We pay very close attention to that. Did it include patients with active brain mets? Did it not? Were this for patients with mutation carriers, such as BRCA1, BRCA2 carriers? So all that is very closely looked at when we discuss this, and we will put those guidelines into our pathways. This is recommended in patients with active brain mets, or this, if patients have a BRCA mutation, this is a specific treatment they should get. So that's the very detailed part of the discussion. We're lucky when we discuss these drugs, not always, but often amongst our group, because they're so closely involved in clinical research, we often have someone in our group that either was involved in that study or a similar study and has really deep knowledge about this particular HER2 drug or this particular triple negative drug or CDK4/6 inhibitor or PARP inhibitor, and they're able to kind of give us some additional depth of knowledge about, what group this makes sense in and what things we need to highlight when we add this in our pathways. At Dana-Farber, the outcomes we've seen as we've seen pathways is that we are able to see as a group what we're doing when. If we are using a lot of capecitabine first line, and we had not previously stated we should do that, we go back and look at it and discuss if it makes sense to change our pathways, or should we change what we're choosing in a given setting. So certainly that we're doing what we recommend. That we recommend a given treatment, we're actually following that in that situation, and if not, why not? It also helps, like many academic centers, we have a main academic campus, but we have several satellites as well. And so at our satellites, the oncologists may be more general oncologists. They may have some expertise in breast cancer, for instance, but they might be also treating a variety of different cancers. So we've seen the advantage that if at the center, where those of us that only treat breast cancer put our heads together and figure out the nitty-gritty of what we want to do in a given situation, our satellites then have easy access to that and can kind of look in and see what are they doing at our main campus and make sure that they're in line. So I think for our satellites, it's been very helpful. It changes so quickly, medicine. Like it's when I first started, which was a while ago, it was easy to keep up with the different treatments for the different cancers because there weren't that many treatments and it really wasn't very molecular at all. And now I think there's so many layers of information and things we have to think of that it's really helpful to have that in a guideline like a pathways and know that this is a real life document. This is not just, let someone imagine. This is what we're actually doing day to day and what we feel works and what we feel is best in the patient interest. So that's been one advantage that Again, everything's thought through, and we're doing things uniformly, and we're providing that information to places where maybe they don't just treat one particular cancer type. Another advantage is, as we're planning clinical trials, we can look and see what type of, how many patients do we have in that situation where a trial will be helpful. So if we look at how many patients started second line treatment for metastatic HER2 positive breast cancer, or how many patients with previous first line CDK4/6 inhibitor went on to receive, a second line CDK4/6 inhibitor or other agent, they can look at that space and say, oh, we started 60 new patients in last month. That's a situation where we definitely have a need for a new trial. Or we can say we only started 3 new patients in the last 3 months. That's not something we're going to have enough numbers to support a trial. So it's been helpful at designing trials as well. As far as how pathways will develop over time, I think that there's potential for a lot more things we can do with it. So what, as I mentioned before, is really fine-tuning more the toxicity, especially in the metastatic setting, being able to prioritize what toxicities are most important in that given situation to avoid, and really having it help you rank or prioritize treatments based on that. But another thing that I see us doing is using it more for specific situations. We recently designed and implemented and discussed and put together pathways for inflammatory breast cancer, because there are differences in how that's treated versus other types of breast cancer. That took a lot of work and a lot of discussions, but I think people felt very good at the end that we had come together with that. The next one we're looking at designing is specific pathways for breast cancer with brain metastases. We're lucky to have a very active group in that of medical oncologists, neurosurgeons, neuro-oncologists, radiation oncologists, and that group works closely together to see a lot of patients that get treated by us, as well as send in for opinions. So using that expertise, we can come up with what do you do in those specific situations when you have active brain metastases, and how should that change your treatment, and what treatments make more sense than others. Other situations that I think we'll look at doing in the future is we have Rachel Friedman in our group has expertise in treating older women with cancer, and so it'd be nice to have that built in. There's nothing in our current pathways that says do this for this age and that for that age, other than based on menopausal status. But it is helpful to know, as people get older and they have other comorbidities and other medical challenges, what are some of the ways you would potentially modify treatment that would make sense in that population? What works, what doesn't work, what's too toxic, what's well tolerated. So it'd be nice to build that into our pathway so it was easily accessed there.